So today we're talking about reflection and rotation, which is 9.8 in our textbook. When we're looking at reflection and rotation, so there are two different types of transformations. When we talk about transformations, there's a variety of transformations that we can use, and reflection and rotation are two of them. Reflections and rotations are what's called isometric, which means that even though they've moved, the shape has been moved, the size of the shape has not been changed. So that's what isometric is talking about. Right, the first one we're going to look at is reflection. So reflection is when the shapes are reflected in a mirror line. Now you've probably had experience with this before in other years. So it can also be called a flip. So you flip the image. It's like being reflected in a mirror. So when we reflect or rotate, so either one, we use that the little apostrophe there to identify the reflected or rotated image. So A will become A with a little comma-like thing above it. Okay, so you can see this is the original shape here, and this is the image that's been reflected, and you notice that it's got the A has got a little comma-like symbol above it to denote that it's the image, so not the original. Alright, now when we're doing a reflection, you have an axis that you reflect it over. So we have a coordinate grid, which is what this is called here, this whole thing, the grid, and then you have two lines of axis, right? So you've got the x-axis and then you've got the y-axis. You can reflect the image over either axis, so you can either reflect it over the x-axis, which means you would reflect it this way. Otherwise, if you reflect it over the y-axis, you would reflect the image across ways, so right or left, instead of up or down for the x-axis. Okay, and when we're identifying where the image is, we use the points on the grid to denote these things. Okay, so when we're looking at these coordinates, however, you may already know that you look at the x-axis first. So this is -1 and -1. Okay, for A. So, and then we're looking at x first, then y. Okay, so that's something really important to know when you're writing down your coordinates. Otherwise, even though you may know what you're doing, if you don't write the answer down correctly because you haven't done the x-axis properly, then you won't get the marks that you deserve. Okay, so we want to make sure that that happens. Now, in this one, we have to reflect the image of the shape over the mirror line, which is the y-axis in this case. So we need to reflect it over this line, so that means we need to move it from left, we flip it left to right, so flip it over to the right. Okay, so what we do when we do this, we can see it's -1 and -1, so therefore we need to move it to 1, 1 here. So I'm going to put my little dot there. Okay, so that will be A. Alright, now B is -1, -2, so that means it would be 1, 2. So that's B. C is -3, -3, which would mean it would be +3, +3. +3, -3, sorry. And then D is -3, -1, so that may be +3, -1 here. Alright, then I can join them together. And that is my reflected image. And then I can write the coordinates down. So 1, -1 for A, 1, -2 for B, 3, -3 for C, and D is 3, -1 there. So that's what you need to write as your answer. Okay, now we're going to look at rotation. So rotation is when the shapes are turned. So they're rotated around a point, but another name for it is to turn it. And it involves a center point of rotation. So here you can see the C is the center point, and you need an angle of rotation such as 90 or 180 degrees. So in this example, it's been rotated 90 degrees clockwise. So as the clock turns around 90 degrees around C. So this is the original image here, and it's been turned 90 degrees around C clockwise. Now you can see these little red dots here. Now this is really important to help you to draw compass, use a compass and draw circles there from each point here, so that you can follow the rotation line around 90, 180 degrees, whatever you need to turn it. It's just easier to rotate it if you draw those lines in. Now let's look at a couple of examples for rotation. Okay, so this example, we have to draw the image of the shape and give the coordinates of A, B and D. So that's after you've rotated the shape. You need to do that 90 degrees anti-clockwise about C. So anti-clockwise means opposite of the clock, so you need to go this way around point C. Okay, so what we do is we're looking at, first of all, moving each coordinate point. So A, here we need to move it 90 degrees. So 90 degrees is a right angle, so we're going to move it 90 degrees around C. So that will leave it, A will be here. I'm going to use my apostrophes there to identify it as the image. Now B, we're going to rotate that 90 degrees. That would be there. So that's B. And then we've got D here, so it's a bit trickier. We just need to make sure we move it around the circle only 90 degrees. Okay. So that would be there. Alright, so that's D. We need to make sure that we now join the points together. Okay, and then write the coordinates. So this is a bit trickier, writing these coordinates, because the A and B are actually on the x-axis. So you just need to remember, if it's on the x-axis, it's actually, we haven't moved anywhere up, so we need to write a 0. So it will be, A will be -1. Remember, we do the x-axis first. So -1, but then we haven't moved up anywhere, so it's 0. It will just be -1, 0. B will be -3, 0. And then D will be -1 and 2, because we have moved up 2. Okay, you only need to write one example down, so no need to write this one if you've already done the other one. So draw the image of this shape and give the coordinates of A, B and D after rotating the shape 180 degrees about C in either direction. Now I've put that because it doesn't matter which way you rotate it. When you're rotating it 180 degrees, you'll still end up with the same position. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's clockwise or anti-clockwise. It just says 180 degrees about C, and you just turn it either way. Alright, so let's start by looking at point A, moving at 180 degrees, so that's half a circle. Alright, so 180 degrees here. 180 degrees for B. With our apostrophes. and then 180 degrees for C. Alright, and then join them together. And there you have your image. So A is at, so remember we do the x-axis first. So A is 0 because we haven't moved on the x-axis, and then we've moved down to -1. B is also 0 because we're on the, we haven't moved from the 0 point on the x-axis, but we've moved down -3. So 0, -3, and then D is we've moved across -2 and then down -1. So that is the coordinates for that example. So hopefully you will be able to work well and do each of these. Now when you're doing the exercises, you need to use your grid book because it already has the squares there, or otherwise use your iPad and make sure your textbook is in a program that you can draw on, and then you can just draw on the textbook examples there. Otherwise, taking photos and putting it in Show Me and then drawing it on Show Me there, that would make it a lot easier for you and take less time drawing all of the diagrams.